Shh.
Don't look at the TV.
3, 2.
Hello, everybody. And welcome to the Sports Bloopers number reel 2. Welcome to the Sports Junkies, everybody. I'm Thomas Bookwalter, along with our starting lineup, David Frias and Ben Baker. Good to have you guys on, as usual. And we have so much stuff going on in sports right now that we can talk about. The U.S. Open just wrapped up in San Francisco. The BCS, college football, just agreed on a 4-team playoff.
Playoffs?
Format for the upcoming, starting this upcoming season.
2014.
It was going to start 2014. Great, thank you,
and it has
David.
to be approved by the BCA,
right, of course.
BCS committee.
And we all know how messed up that could take with the BCS. But that's something we can talk about. Baseball's in full swing. The NFL draft. We're gonna have a lot of fun today. And our first topic is going to be the NFL draft. Niners and Raiders, and the other 30 NFL teams drafting in late April. And let's look at the Bay Area, guys. And we'll start first with our San Francisco 49ers, and soon to be known as the San Francisco 49ers of Santa Clara. But we won't go into that. The Niners had 7 picks in this last draft, taking with the first pick, Illinois wide receiver A.J. Jenkins, who Bay Area fans got to see at AT&T Park in January when they played at the Kraft Hunger Bowl. Illinois was in that game. One of Ben's personal favorites, running back from Oregon, LaMichael James.
My dad's alma mater.
There you go. Wake Forest guard Joe Looney, outside linebacker from Notre Dame, Darius Fleming, Trent Robinson, free safety from Michigan State. Western Oregon center, there was a difference. Western Oregon center Jason Slowey, and defensive end Cam Johnson from Virginia. Guys, those are the Niners draft. And Dave, let's go to you first here. And we all knew as soon as the NFC Championship game was over last year, and the Niners, I'm sure as you well remember, there was only one reception for a wide receiver that whole game, which was, I believe, Crabtree made that one reception for the Niners for the wide receivers. I mean, there was just not enough targets for Alex Smith. So we all knew going in the wide receiver was a big need for the 49ers. Before the draft, though, the Niners did, they signed Randy Moss, they signed Mario Manningham. So were you surprised when the Niners still went after the wide receiver pick with the first pick, when a lot of people thought that the guard position would go first after the team lost our right guard Adam Schneider?
Well, not really surprised, because you just mentioned in the NFC Championship game, I mean, for 4 yards to wide receiver yards, that's humiliating. And, when you watch the game, you didn't realize that. It was so competitive, but the fact that the Niners really didn't have a good passing game, and yet they were so close to reaching the Super Bowl. I mean, if the Niners had at least one quality wide receiver in that whole game, that could have been the difference. And so...
or Ted Ginn receiving the kicks.
My
apologies to
even
Kyle
that,
Williams.
even that. You're right. No kidding. Even from special teams, there were several advantages to the Niners. If they would have, had that extra player or Ted Ginn, they would have been in the Super Bowl. But initially, when the Niners go out and sign Randy Moss and Mario Manningham, I mean, you think, well, why do you need to draft why do you have to have your first pick on A.J. Jenkins? But Moss, he still got to prove himself again.
Absolutely.
So far in the offseason workouts, Coach Harbaugh's been giving praise, and it seems like Randy Moss is going to be fully committed for the whole season for the Niners, and will make an improvement as long as he stays healthy. Mario Manningham, he's a good possession receiver. So A.J. Jenkins, I didn't see much of him playing. Tom, I believe you saw him play live,
a touchdown.
right?
He looked pretty good. Yeah, he did.
And he's a rookie player, so he'll have to prove himself. But he's going to add that added youthful speed and athleticism. And he just recently signed a 4-year contract. So there's not going to be worries there.
And this just occurred to me. Maybe it'll give Michael Crabtree a little motivation to actually show up for training camp and prove that he should be in there too. Because I don't think Crabtree. I mean, he's done fine. He's done all right on the field, although not as good as expected. Right. But I don't think he's been to training camp at all since he became a 49er.
Well, hopefully he will be this time.
That might give him some motivation.
And he had a good year last year.
He did.
Other than the playoff, but hopefully added competition could only help.
He just pointed at me.
I just threw to Ben. Okay, he was the
host.
I agree with everything Dave said.
Well, good. Dave's very smart about this stuff.
He's waiting for the next draft pick, okay? He's going to cover that, all right?
So he is. He's ready. He's ready for training camp. He's ready for preseason.
He'll cover the next pick.
But no, I mean, well, okay. Well, before along with getting A.J. Jenkins and the rest of the draft, Ben, what did you think initially before the draft of the Randy Moss and Mario Manningham signings, along with Crabtree adding to the wide receiver core?
It's great. I mean, of course, we're all wondering if Moss can return to, greatness. He's a lot older now. He's had a year removed from the league, so it's a question mark. And even Manningham seemed to be on the rise to being maybe a number one receiver on a good team 2 years ago. But as of last year, he took a more diminished role with the Giants as they brought up Victor Cruz. But I think he's going to be a very solid number two on this team. And hopefully he won't have to be the number one. Hopefully Randy Moss will step up and be a good number one receiver. So bringing in Jenkins and, like I'd said before, Crabtree was thrown into a tough position when he, as a rookie was supposed to be the number one receiver on the team. Jenkins isn't going to have to go through that pressure. So I think between those two guys as your third and fourth receivers.
But there's also a difference there between Crabtree and Jenkins and the fact that Crabtree was drafted to help, really, in a way, help save the team. Because the Niners were going absolutely nowhere fast. Right. And A.J. Jenkins is already drafted onto a good team that made the NFC Championship last year.
And the thing is that the superb play of Vernon Davis in the playoffs made you forget about the Niners' lack of wide receiver
until
depth.
they lost.
So can you only imagine, with the added receiver depth, the Niners.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, well, let's, we like the wide receiver position and look forward to a good competition in training camp. But, the Niners also have a pretty good backfield, and they added to it, Ben, creating some competition by drafting LaMichael James out of Oregon. And he's joining, I mentioned how crowded it is going to be back there. He's joining Frank Gore, Kendall Hunter, who had a great rookie year for the Niners last year. Newly signed Brandon Jacobs from the New York Giants, Anthony Dixon, and fullback Bruce Miller. So, Ben, were you surprised with this move, and what do you think James will bring to the Niners at the end of the backfield?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised, being that they'd already gotten Brandon Jacobs and, Gore and Hunter, as well as Dixon and Miller. Michael James, I've loved watching throughout college. Oregon's had a great string of running backs for some time now, and he's even one of the most exciting of those, very explosive back. I like to compare him to Barry Sanders. He's the kind of guy that is just that agile on his feet. He's not a big bruising back. He's not, your goal line back, but you put him in and it could be a touchdown on any play.
Well, okay, well, go ahead, Dave.
No, when I heard them draft James, my initial reaction is he could be used as a play action fake pass, and he could get 10, 15 yards easily. If you saw Oregon play Stanford last 2 years, you saw how dominant he played against them. Yeah, so anything similar to that, he could only add to Niners' offense.
Absolutely. I mean, well, Ben, obviously let me ask you guys, this will get worked out more obviously during training camp and as the preseason rolls along. But how would you use, if you're Coach Harbaugh, how would you use all these guys? Where do you see LaMichael James fitting in?
Well, I'm definitely no Coach Harbaugh. Because Frank Gore is going to be your number one back.
Yeah.
I'm no Coach Harbaugh, so I mean.
Well, we all know that. Neither am I. Don't worry. Neither am I.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to picture. I'm sure, he's got lots of plays drawn up before the game even begins. I think he's, going to be something to kind of throw the defense off. Once they throw him into the field, because he's not going to be in there every play of the game, the defense is going to have to be thinking, okay, we got to be ready for any part of the field to be attacked now, and a very quick back is in the game. So even if they don't use them on a play, the defense is going to have to be ready for just about anything. So it's like a tempo changer, kind of.
Right. Okay, but and this also might. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you see that Frank Gore, he's up in age. And he's more of a bruiser. He's a bruiser, but he could still get that first down, get that 20-yard run. And I see Brandon Jacobs coming in as a third down specialist, I guess. And then you're going to have Hunter and James come in maybe second down play, the scat backs kind of players. Bruce Miller is the fullback, so he's definitely going to be covered that. Maura Norris, I don't know if he's still on the team. As the backup fullback. And then the Niners have quality in that depth. That's important, the fullback position. Anthony Dixon is the guy I'm kind of wondering if he's even going to make the roster. If you remember in the championship game, he blew it on third down and one. They had a late stop. And I think Coach Harbaugh saw that and said, well, I need more depth here, and I want players that's gonna make the plays.
Well, and I think it's important. I think it's the NFC Championship game, and it's easy to focus on that game. But if you remember the entire season, their red zone offense was horrible.
Absolutely.
The entire season, their red zone offense just was near the bottom of the league. So I think it's good to not only to add depth in both positions, wide receiver and running back, to give Alex Smith more options, to give the offensive coordinator more guys he can draw plays with, just so you have more choices. And like you were saying, when you have an older running back like Frank Gore, you remember for a couple of years there, it was all Gore. It was Frank Gore. It was 3rd and 18. Let's hand the ball to Gore. And Frank Gore was every play, so that's good. And that the lifespan of a running back in the NFL is short. Yeah. So if you can have a bunch of guys to come in and give him some reps off, he can be even fresher and ready to go when you need him for that big play. So I think that's good to create depth at both those positions.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, all right. Well, Dave, I'm going to ask both of you this. Whoever wants to grab it first. Was this a successful draft for San Francisco, first of all?
Defer to me, okay. I think on the offensive side of the draft, I think the Niners did make an improvement. Overall, I would give maybe a solid B+. In overall scheme of things, Darius Fleming, he's going to be out for the year. He already tore his knee during the mini camp.
Oh, wonderful.
So they have Cam Johnson. He's the backup defensive end. But for the most part, the defense is pretty much set. We're going to have all the returning starters, so it's not going to hurt too much.
Big too.
But overall, like I said, I think with the offensive side, and we got an offensive lineman, Joe Looney. He's going to try to replace Adam Snyder, who left for Arizona. So depending on how he does and develops, this could be a real good draft for the 49ers.
Ben, who has the chance, you think, to make the biggest impact right away on the 49ers out of these draft picks?
Right away, probably Jenkins, because he could become an explosive player, and James is probably going to be, 3rd or 4th halfback out there. Or if Looney finds his way into a starting role, then that's certainly going to make a big impact too. So between those 3 guys, but I think Jenkins probably.
Long term?
Long term could be James if he becomes the feature back in a few years. I think he's capable of being that guy.
I know you're a big Oregon fan. Mm-hmm. His height, would that be an issue? I think he's 5'9".
Well, they said the same thing about Barry Sanders and lots of other backs.
There's a comparison.
It could be an issue, or he could be able to transcend that.
And you believe he's physical enough to take it to the next level with the 49ers?
Well, yeah, it's a different game than college, so they're going to be hitting a lot harder, and a lot of reps out there could take its toll. But I think time's going to tell.
Okay. Well, we'll obviously be looking forward to seeing what happens once training camp and the preseason's coming up. Yeah, it's coming up. Let's drive over across the Bay Bridge to Oakland, and it's quite a drive, by the way, depending on traffic. But let's go over to the Coliseum, where the Raiders obviously had a draft too, and they only have 6 picks in the draft. The Niners had 7 Raiders draft picks included. Offensive lineman Tony Bergstrom from Utah, San Diego State linebacker Miles Burris, Penn State defensive end Jack Crawford, wide receiver Jaron Kreiner from Arizona, defensive tackle Christo Balukti from Georgia State. I'm hoping I pronounced that right. See the look on Ben's face.
No, you didn't.
And
I don't know.
Penn State linebacker Nathan Stuper. So, the Raiders, of course, knowing the Raiders' big issue this past season was defense. And they did use most of the picks to improve both lines, offense and defense. But as I mentioned, defense especially was the big disaster in Oakland last year and probably cost them a trip to the playoffs, although they had a chance going into the last game. So, Ben, let's start with you this time. Do you like these picks for improving the Raider defense?
Well, to be completely honest, I don't really know a lot of these names. They didn't get a pick, I think, in either of the first 2 rounds.
Right.
They're new names to me, so I'm just not an expert on these guys. I think they did a good job of addressing defense with 3 of the first 5 picks.
Dave, have any thoughts?
The Raiders, they're in a rebuilding process. I think Scott McKenzie, he's the new general manager, and they have the new coach from Denver. I if you guys can recall his name right now off the top of your heads, but he's a more. I mean, based on the draft, all these picks look like projects. So I don't think there's any way they're going to come in. I mean, who knows? You just never know. There's somebody here that could come in, and I mean, like Jack Crawford. I mean, they come from Penn State, and then from they come from all these picks for the most part are from good quality Division I programs.
2 picks from Penn State too.
Yeah,
you
two
the
picks.
linebacker Nathan
But
Stupar.
they're not really like they're not like they weren't superstars in college, and they're projects, and they're probably going to come in as projects and be on the second team. So
Dave, you brought up an interesting point that the Raiders are rebuilding, and I think that a lot of Raider fans would agree. Like the last few years, they've been kind of on their way up. I mean, they've gotten a little better steadily each of the last few years. I mean, this year, like I said, in 2011, they collapsed defensively. But other than that, they've gotten a little better each of the last couple of years. So what do you think you want to call it rebuilding when the Raiders just got to the point last year where they were 1 win away from a playoff spot? They win that final day, they're in.
Yeah, but there's so much inconsistency with the team. Okay, so they make the playoffs. They're not real playoff contenders.
You acting like that's not a big deal, but don't forget the Raiders haven't made the playoffs in 10 years.
Right, and
I'm
sure the Raiders organization would say their standard, their so-called standards of excellence, and yeah, Al Davis has passed away and whatnot. But I'm thinking their goals is they want to be year by year playoff contenders. And on the offensive side, they have some serious potential. Carson Palmer, he's going to have his first training camp with the Raiders and whatnot. The defensive side, though, is a big issue. They were horrible. And these picks right here, I don't see really what is going to make any improvements. That's just how it is with the Raiders. They're really inconsistent. And if their goal is just purely to make the playoffs, then you're right. Maybe you don't have to say it's rebuilding. But if they're
because rebuilding sounds like you're tearing the whole thing up, and you're
But in a way, with their management, they are. They're changing everybody.
Yes,
so it is in a way of the process. I guess it's a wait and see with the Raiders too.
All right. Well, okay. Well, let me ask you this, Ben. Then out of the looking at the drafts and knowing that the Raiders did, even without the Raiders having a pick in the first 2 rounds, who do you think the 2 Bay Area teams who had the better draft?
Oh, the Niners, but they were at a significant advantage of getting picks in the first 2 rounds. And I just think their first 2 picks with A.J. Jenkins and LaMichael James are 2 guys that have the ability to be, prime-time players that in the long term people are saying, what a great pick. The Raiders, it's not often you have a 3rd-round offensive lineman who people are talking about years later. It's possible, but
I think
the Niners got the better draft.
Right. I think for the Raiders, the draft is important, and improving the defense is definitely a key. But I mean, even by Raiders standards, Ben, I was watching our postseason show that we did before the draft that you and I were doing with vintage junkie Mike Mitchell over the phone, and we were talking about how the Raiders even by Raider standards, it was a horrible year penalty-wise. And I mean, to me, that's going to be a big key for the Raiders there. No matter what they do with the draft, what they did with the draft, and what these players bring to the team, if they can't cut down on the penalties, it's not going to mean anything. I mean, let's face it. Teams in the AFC West, teams around football, they go into Oakland, or Oakland comes to them, and they're thinking, how can we make the Raiders screw up? How can we make the Raiders make a mistake and hurt themselves?
No, you're absolutely right, and it's hard to win games when you've got the most penalty yards, especially when it's worst in the league. Is that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was by Raiders standards. It was a horrible year, and the Raiders always commit a lot of penalties.
The coach for the Raiders is Dennis Allen.
That was it, Dennis Allen.
So maybe with the new coaching staff coming into Oakland, maybe they'll have better discipline with the players, and then the referees might give more leeway with the Raiders than in the past. Maybe they had a vendetta against Al Davis or something. Now Al Davis has passed away. Maybe it's a fresh start, and maybe the Raiders won't be so critical on any mistakes the Raiders do.
You believe Raider fans say that the NFL is something against the Niners?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they do. They're out to get the
Raiders.
Even though the Raiders, their real glory was back in the 70s and early 80s. But still, long after that.
In the 60s too, but yeah.
But really in the 70s.
Right, no, you're right.
But even long after that was over with, it seemed like the referees were always, anything the Raiders do, they always give him penalties, and maybe they're going to give him a fresh start, but we'll see.
Yeah, there's no denying they've got a reputation as a dirty team.
Right.
But that's not necessarily
Although
true.
maybe not as
It's
bad
a reputation.
maybe it wasn't as
stigma.
as a public reputation as the Detroit Lions last year, and that's for another show. And then,
yeah.
the whole handshake again, and then Dominic Sue stepping on someone's head, and the whole thing was
Coin a new phrase here, handshake gate.
handshake game. What did I just call it?
I don't know.
I thought I said that. Okay.
Oh, did I take that from you? I am
No,
so
well,
sorry.
I said the handshake. Yeah, handshake gate. Exactly. I mean, you're right. I mean, but the Raiders, they definitely, defense and penalties is going to be the key. They have, I think, we discussed it during the season last year, that offensively they are much improved, especially with Carson Palmer taking over at quarterback. Let me ask you this, Dave. You mentioned the new coach, the new GM, and the new coach. Do you think it was fair to blame to get rid of Hugh Jackson after last year? I mean, he got them one. They were finally over. They were finally a 500 team. Finally, after all these years, and again, one win away from a playoff spot, and he's gone.
Right. I think all along he was going to probably not be the Raiders coach. Once
I think
once
he
they
wanted
got the
to
new
come back.
GM, yeah, he wanted to come back, but he made these promises, and then in a way he didn't live up to them. And then I think some of the players, he was in the press. During the press conference, he would kind of call out the team, not necessarily the players, but more the defense or the offense. And maybe he started losing respect from the players as well, instead of keeping it in-house. I think he did do a good job. He was probably, really he tried his best, to change the culture of the Raiders. And like you said, he was pretty close to it. But in the end, kind of like Singletary, it seems like, to be a head coach, you got to really be knowledgeable. You got to really know the offense and defense. You got to be really scholarly to the point in all parts of the football.
Right. Well, Ben, I remember a lot of people, at least the Bay Area press, wondering if Jackson lost his opportunity when he said, "We're not losers anymore," because we finished 8-8. I mean, it's true technically, but I'm not sure maybe that's something you want to say, because with the Raiders are kind of, they haven't won as many. I'm going to make a comparison here. Obviously, they haven't been as successful, but I think especially with Al Davis, they had a lot of the same mentality as the New York Yankees. You win, or it's a failure of a season.
Right.
You get to the playoffs, or it's a failure. You win the Super Bowl, with the Yankees, you win the World Series, or the season's a failure. So I think with Al Davis, just win, baby, And so I think 8-8, we're not losers anymore. Okay, fine, we don't have a losing record, but we're still losers. We didn't make the playoffs. I mean,
Well, I don't know if there was an issue. Fans didn't like the way he said that.
right.
Is that what we're saying here?
And I think the press jumped on it too. I know the press kind of jumped on it. Like I'm saying, and speculated after he got fired if that was one of the factors, is that the "we're not losers anymore" comment.
Personally, I don't think it should be. I think there's
It
way
was
too
probably
many
better
times.
than what was it, Callahan, who said we got to be the dumbest football team in America? Was that Callahan?
Go
That
Callahan.
was a few years back. I mean, that's a better comment than that, but still.
I mean, I've heard a lot worse things said in the press than for fans to be forgiving.
Right.
So I think they ought to, just because they didn't like the way he said something, you can't deny that he did a great job with the team. That they did get to an 8-8 despite having McFadden miss time. And it's not a team that's loaded with superstars. Michael Bush stepped in and did a great job. But for the fact that they were, this close to making the playoffs and they hadn't done it in a while, I don't know. Seems harsh.
Dave, considering that they just, like Ben just said, and we've been saying, all came this close to making the playoffs. And in fact, if I remember correctly, when we all did our NFL playoff preview, we all had the Raiders making it before that last game. We all said Raiders are in.
Yeah.
So do you think now with what the Raiders have done in the offseason, with the draft, moves they still make, the new coaching staff, and the fact that Team Tebow is no longer in the AFC West.
But now Peyton Manning is.
Yeah, see, and that was my, exactly.
I'm sorry.
Is this legitimate? Can the Raiders, are the Raiders a legitimate playoff threat as of now going into 2012?
Ooh, I would say no, not right now.
Okay.
But like I said, when training camp comes around, you know, it's going to be hard to tell really probably until December of
Right.
this year, you know.
Right.
But from the onset, like as of now, it looks like they'll probably have a similar record as last year. Pretty much a mediocre
8-8.
team. Yeah, I mean, but they have some potential. And then with Carson Palmer and then McFadden, his health is going to be crucial because he's their star offensive player. Darius Hayward-Bay had a good year, but now he's had some off-field issues, so he'll have to clear that up and stay healthy as well. And then on the defensive side, that's going to be the biggest question, I would think.
Okay. Okay. No, I agree. Ben, real quick. 49ers. Are they a legitimate playoff threat again?
Oh, they're
And
absolutely.
especially in the NFC West.
I mean, I think the real question is if they have a good chance to make it to the Super Bowl, and I think they do. I think this is a team on the rise, and
He's jinxing it right now, folks, just so you know that.
I didn't say they'd win it.
I know you didn't.
But this is a very, very strong 49ers team, and as a 49ers fan, I'm really excited to watch that
Yeah,
coming
well,
season.
it should be an interesting year in the Bay Area. You know, I mean, the Niners trying to get back to the NFC Championship and go even further, go to the Super Bowl. It'd be nice to win one more here before they move to Santa Clara. Wouldn't it be nice to win one more
Yeah.
Candlestick?
Oh, yeah.
They got 2 years left. And then, the Raiders trying to finally break through and make the playoffs again as well. So it should be a fun football season in the Bay Area, and we'll be ready for it. We are the Sports Junkies. Tommy B, Dave, BB, Ben Baker, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. That was good, yeah.